Hi. Welcome back to Two Kims.
One pod.
I'm one of your Kims, Peter Kim.
And I'm your other Kim, Unji Kim.
Thank you so much for coming back to the show. You guys, it's APIHM. Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month.
Yeah.
Look, it's a lot of letters to say if you're Asian, you better get some free baked goods from your local bakery or, they're being racist.
I mean, also, it's also cruel that they would make this month that long. Like, you know what I mean?
So long.
Like, it's like the thing that would make it very difficult for Asian people to say.
And to even to put on a banner, it looks stupid. Like, Black History Month is Black History Month. Like, you get it. But with AAPIHM, there's so many of us involved. There's like the East Asians, Southeast Asians, South Asians.
Yeah, we got to respect the American Samoas. We got to
right. Turks and Caicos. No, I'm just kidding. I don't even know where that is. But yeah, there's such a big umbrella that. Why do you think it's such a big umbrella? Like, Black History Month is also like, if you're American Black, Nigerian Blacks, whatever from South America, you're Black.
Mm-hmm.
But why? I guess because we're all not the same color.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, also, like, I think some of it is, I think it's like really emblematic of how racist Asian people are to each other.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that, like, no, I don't want to be like that. Make sure that you're separating us out.
Yeah, it's like the Chinese being like, we're not Korean.
No.
No.
You know what I was thinking about? Like, wouldn't it be fun, like, with like how Korean culture is sort of taking over, like, internationally, like, as sort of the thing that people know about Asia. I was like, it'd be really fun if, like, a Chinese person, how, like, anytime you go to Europe or you're in a place with a lot of really white people that don't interact with a lot of Asian people, it's like, it's a ni hao all the time, right? It's like, they're like, ni hao, like, they think like somehow that's they're helping or something.
Right. Or it's like when, the Mexicans in my neighborhood call me pinche chino.
Yeah.
Like a fucking Chinaman.
Yeah. Exactly.
Because that's what they know.
Yeah. And it's also like, it's the biggest thing that, absolutely.
It's the most people.
It's the most people.
For sure. Yeah. So I get it.
The numbers wise, it makes sense,
Yeah.
So, like, it's just, if you're any sort of Asian person, East Asian person, you're getting ni haoed. I was just like, it'd be so great if a Chinese person got annyeonghaseyo'd.
Yeah. Annyeong. I
Annyeonghaseyo.
think that'd be so cool.
Yeah, if someone asked them, I've had bulgogi.
Going to a Peking Mandarin Peking house and being like, do you have bulgogi? And then being like, the fuck?
Like, wouldn't that be exciting if, like, I was just like,
you mean broccoli beef? Yeah.
Like, if Chinese people started getting that, I was like,
that
that's
would be
cool.
so exciting. Like, if random people from Memphis, Tennessee went to Shanghai and they're like, where's the bulgogi? That'd be so crazy. That'd be like a proliferation of our culture to the point where, like, oh, now the racists are getting it confused.
This is what I mean.
That's really nice. That's where we want to be. Well, mentioning that, growing up in America, there was the soft power of Asian countries, or like the branding of Asian countries is very interesting to me, because growing up in New York City, there was the Chinese restaurants were like the restaurants where it was cheaper food, right? MSG being bad was a huge branding thing in the 90s.
It really was.
Yeah, it was very like anti-Chinese culture.
Yes.
They make cheap things. Don't buy things made in China. Like, there was this kind of like soft war happening with China that incidentally now is like flipped on its fucking head.
For sure.
Which is so incredible to see, that all these Chinese TikTokers would be like, you want the Birkin? It's $3. Direct ship to you, no charge. Like, it's like amazing to see that. But in the general zeitgeist, Japanese culture became like almost like high end.
Fancy.
Like going to
Sony.
a sushi restaurant
Yes.
was a nice night out,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Which is like, for an American person, it's like raw fish on top of rice, and they're like, ooh, shishi, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
And there was no mention of Korean food at all.
No.
Like, we knew because we were in the like diaspora, but like now it's become like, especially the KBBQ has become a night out.
Absolutely.
Right? It's like a thing where, and I just really love that between the three cultures, that Koreans have really sold these whites on a night out where you cook your own food. This is, to me, 승리. That is victory to me. Like, we won, bitches.
Clothes smell bad. Like, we've actually ruined your night and the day
Yes.
after. So, like, you know,
You
it
get
is funny.
raw meat and like 6 to 8 little dishes of pickles.
Yeah,
and they're
and the
calling
thing
it a
is-
day, and you get charged $600.
And the thing is, you got to Chipotle your own meal. You got to
Yes.
create your own bowl. You got to create your own bowl.
own little wrap. Yeah. It's so crazy to me. And they're like, wow, KBBQ, we love it. And I'm like, bitch, you're working. Like, so I think
really
we really
is.
killed it. The Koreans have really killed it. And I believe we have the smallest population out of all three countries.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe Japan's smaller. I don't know. But yeah, because we're half a country.
Yeah.
So yeah, I really think like we've killed it in the last 50 years.
I mean, yes, and we're actually just the tip. So it's like kind of crazy that we're able to, you know,
right? Because Korean culture,
Yeah.
in the movies has become the Hallyu has really worked.
Absolutely.
You know, before that, it was a lot of kung fu. Jackie Chan's of
Sure.
the world,
Yeah.
really ushered in that side of Chinese culture, the like martial arts, and in Japan, really ushered in like the, you know, with Kurosawa and like Japanese filmmaking, the Bushido, kind of ninja, not ninja, but samurai world.
Sure.
Also, martial artsy, like fighting. Right? Like,
yeah.
yeah.
But there's an artsy part to Japanese cinema, and in particular, like even like the manga and anime,
Yes.
I think is the bigger cultural effect. And like
Yes,
as
for
opposed
sure.
to, yeah, and in China, for sure, it's the martial arts Jackie Chan. And
Right.
like also the MSG and like food, like it's always food and like like something like in their culture that like
yeah.
that's what counts.
The storytelling.
It has to be two. Yeah.
It's storytelling through food, storytelling through film. That's what's, you know, poking through. But with Koreans, we've really introduced cinema in a completely different way. Like, none of us are fighting in like martial arts. We're
Sure.
not in some kind of period like, oh, that's a time far, far away. Like, we're
Sure.
talking about Parasite now. We're talking about zombie apocalypse now. Like, we're taking American cultural touch points, but making it just excellent. You know? And it's like, the Asians have never done that before. Asians have always poked through with like their specific culture. Like, Koreans haven't poked through with like taekwondo stories. You know what I mean?
Like stationary, being like
Yeah,
hitting
like,
boards, like
Yeah. Or like taekwondo kid or whatever. You know, like it's very interesting. Like, we've poked through with contemporary stories.
I mean,
Like
it's
slice of life, even.
I think there's a part of it where it is a product of American colonialism, like cultural colonialism in Korea. And then
100%.
see, and the thing is, like, before, I think in the 80s and 90s, there was a part of aspect to it where Americans were like, well, this is just like a ripoff of, right? Even with the K-pop of that era, it was a ripoff of. And now that the culture has sort of graduate and become in their teenage years, are really expressing themselves and actually skewering and able to, because they're outsiders, use the format and the cultural like the touchstones in a way where it's like subverting the actual form. Because like the thing is, like with Parasite and all the horror, the genre itself, it's like coming out of something that's entirely American, but the way that the storytelling is occurring is so utterly Korean. And the things that they're skewing are utterly Korean. But the things that are utterly Korean in this, at this point, is capitalism.
Is American. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
so
exactly.
like everyone understands this. It's like this has become the thing.
Oh, that's true. There's a shorthand for us because we see it's not like a jump for us.
No.
It's like our thing, but flipped.
Because it's happening on such a scale there. Like it's you know, for whatever wage disparity, income disparity and gap, like it's occurring on a level different than even in America, right?
Yeah.
Same thing with that's the reason why like even K-dramas I think are resonating, because of like how what a departure in like the fantasy of it's working. You know, like it's the, I don't know, like I think that when I meet girls and like a lot of women from like the Philippines and I think Indonesia and in Africa, K-dramas are really, really popular. And it's like places where that sort of fantasy and like the idea of like being able to marry into this thing and
rich.
like
Yes,
like it's like really that's the only way out.
Interesting. It's a way out. Capitalism. So like really like what we have seen in American culture, it's almost like in America it's the idea of like I could marry out has kind of matured.
Yes.
Truly.
Sorry, I need to. Sorry. Okay, wait a second.
You got itch on your foot?
Yeah. No, I gotta. Oh shit. Wait a second. We gotta.
Is there a mouse?
Okay. Yeah. Wait a second. No. Wait a second. We gotta pause this for a second. We'll have to start over. Wait a second. Sorry.
We don't have to start over.
Yeah. Hey, hello. I'm potting right now, so I didn't.
Okay. When do you need the car? I need to, because I have an emergency that just came up.
By like 4.
By 4. Okay, fine, no problem. Thank you for confirming.
Okay. Should we just like beep again? Yeah.
No,
Should
no,
we
no.
beep?
No.
Okay.
Because we've been.
All right. Recording.
Yeah. We'll just pick it up here.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, it's almost like in like the American idea of like that capitalistic, like my prince and like I'm Cinderella and I could become a princess. That whole idea has matured, but not in Korea. Like it's almost like our like values got pushed to Korea and Korea's redoing all of it. You know, and it hasn't like matured enough there yet. Like it's starting to get there because of the income disparity and all that. But I've said this before, like in Korea, I think it's more innocuous because it's homogenous. Whereas here, it's so obvious because a whole slew of people that look a certain way are treated worse. You know what I mean? Like, so like it's...
Yeah, there's like a predominantly... yes.
It's not as easy to get away with.
Yes.
In Korea, like it's so much easier for it to be like a silent kind of mover throughout the culture because we all look the same. So there isn't like an immediate like outlier of like, oh, you're darker skinned, so you are poorer or you have less advantages and blah, blah. I'm sure that does happen systematically, but like not in the way like we see it here because it's truly different ethnicities like fighting for the white pot.
I mean, but I also like, I think because there's a distinct culture coming from African Americans, like in particular, like it's a culture unto itself within like the Americans that Black Americans that live here versus like Nigerian Americans,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like there's a distinct culture, so we're hearing and like seeing, and they're expressing their situation inside of the culture, and it's had a huge impact because their experience resonates, right? It's one of,
Right.
it's still all these things where as art it operates because it's resonating.
Yeah.
There's nothing in Korean culture or even Japanese culture where there's like a sort of
A
underclass
subculture. Yes.
of people that are experiencing this, right? Even if they were like, because you know, like I'm thinking right now very specifically about the Koreans in Japan, right? That were specifically an underclass,
Yeah.
right? Were systematically oppressed.
Uh-huh.
Like if you had a Korean last name, you couldn't go to a certain school. You would be like all this stuff. They never got together and were like, we're
Let's
gonna
rap
start
about it.
That's rap about
Yeah.
it. Let's like
No,
create
exactly.
like special art. Like they
Yeah.
literally like
They
we'll
were
just
trying to
change our last
hide.
names. Yes, they're like
Yeah.
we'll change our last names and we'll just pretend to be Japanese
Right. Assimilate.
and so, assimilate. And like
Right.
that's only
because
possible.
they can. They look Japanese.
Ish. I mean, don't tell Japanese people that.
I mean, they would never. But like, that's it's just easier because there's not like an obvious visual cue that you're different. You know, it's like you have to dig at your last name. You know what I mean? Like, you can't just look at a person and be like, no. You know, like that's what's happening here in America. So like in Korea, it's like so insidious because even if, let's say, there was, I'm sure there are like a subculture of like people who are like punk or like not subscribing to capitalism or whatever, and they're making music and culture about it, like Parasite or whatever. Parasite was a huge movie, but
Huge.
day to day, if I'm a Korean person living in Korea,
Yeah.
I don't really understand it because the person who is the CEO of Samsung looks like my uncle. Like we all look exactly the same. So it's hard
Sure.
to like confront it every day, I think, in somewhere like Korea where here it's like so much more obvious.
I think it actually means that you do confront it conceptually. You're able to consider it as abstract
An idea.
thought, as an idea. So
Yeah,
it's
like
actually
imagine
more
there was like a
ingrained.
subculture of poor whites making rap or like some other kind of music.
Insane Clown Posse.
Yeah, or like Appalachian
Yeah.
or whatever.
Yeah.
But like there's a reason why that doesn't, I'm sure there are, but that doesn't really pierce through because the people in control are white. So like it's hard for me to listen to a poor white person complain about the systemic capitalistic oppression when your uncle is in charge.
But
I know that's not your real uncle, but like visually
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
speaking. So like
I don't.
yeah,
I
I'm
think
less
that-
inclined to hear out a white person who's poor than a black person who's poor.
Interesting.
Because the
I
black
think
people
that-
aren't in charge. They're not the majority, even population-wise.
Sure. Yeah. Of course. But I think that, you know, when I say that Koreans are able to process and understand this conceptually, I think that actually means that they're understanding it more deeply. And if
Okay.
you talk to actual Korean people, like regular people, they all get it. They all get it. They know. And it's because of that. Like, because you can't attribute it to a race
Something
thing
else.
out to something
Right.
else, right?
Right,
It's
right.
literally the problem is
Class.
the system.
Right.
Yes. And because they understand it conceptually and because there is no other explanation, right? That I think is actually much more embedded. That's the reason why Parasite actually hits in Korea. It's a huge hit. All these movies that go international, they're huge hits.
Yeah.
And if you just talk to regular people, they all know this to be true. Like
Right.
it's not like a thing that, you know, you have to be a liberal learned person to have this conversation about, you know, in any sort of way. And I think same in America. I think you could talk to most people and they would understand it, but they would understand it in like they have less money. It's easier for this. When I say that in Korea they understand it to be a systemic thing, they see the problem with the entire system. Because they're all along this.
But wouldn't that be easier to change?
I literally asked somebody this when I was in Korea,
and
he was like, yeah, we all know, and we all could, but he literally said the thing where it's like everyone still wants to be a millionaire, and
well,
he's
that's
like,
inherently, that's what I mean. That means culturally it's not piercing through.
I mean, like they're it's the same thing here though. It's like the same sort of like, how do you get rid of the impulse to want more?
I think you have to. It's hard, first of all, because that's inherently how it's set up.
And also, let me tell you, this is how. This is why I think I understood what this guy was talking about. If you've ever met someone who lived in like a communist country, like I'm talking all the Eastern blocs, Cuba, right? If you grew up in a culture where you had to share, when you come to America, you really do not want to share.
100%. Yeah, I get that.
Like it's like it's so even like enforcing it in sort of ways, like it just there's a cap to it where that.
Well, it's their first taste of individualism, and now they're cracked out. You know, like I get it, because back in their country they had to share and it was bad.
It was bad.
Yeah.
Like the quality of jeans, corduroys, all the drapes. Like, I mean, that's the reason why Cubans in Miami, they don't want to share. Russians in America, they don't want to share. Like if you come from a country like that, there's like, when you get here, you're like, fuck.
But also
that.
No country's really figured it out. Like it's always been a mask, like communism. That's not really
an imperfect
happening.
System. Yeah, a perfect system in an imperfect world. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's only been capitalism just masked as different things.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Or oligarchy. You know, rule of the few. So like they're just putting the marketing of that on, but it's not really that. You know, even here, it's like. It's not really capitalism or really representative government. It's just a mask of that. Because the people in control are the people who have been in control for hundreds of years. It's just like changing the fucking awning of it. But like...
So how do you quench the human desire for more?
I don't think that is a human desire. I think it's learned. And
really?
Yeah, I do think. And I think it's because people who live in like a situation where like you don't, for example, like my cousin-in-law, my in-law just visited. And this is inherently why it doesn't work, because he comes from a very wealthy family.
Sure.
And it's very like the Siddhartha, like it's like turning your back on your riches and going into the forest.
Sure,
right?
sure.
So
how noble.
Their whole thing is like I'm choosing to detach. Right? So I'm like, okay, but you could only do that because you came from a place of not needing.
Yes.
Right? This scarcity mindset. So that's learned. So like if that's how, to answer your question, to not want, you have to come from a place where you're not traumatized by scarcity. That's the original sin that like turns us into these fucking animals. If you're somehow, if you can come from a place of non-scarcity and enough, you won't have that instinct. It's just we are thrown into it. Even rich people are thrown into it because there's billionaires.
Sure.
And like you're an outgroup somehow, you know, but like, I don't know. It's the same reason why like Hollywood is run by rich kids who like didn't need anything. So they're like, oh, I'm just going to like flit around and be an actor and like take pictures all day and blah, blah, you know, because like they don't have the drive. They just have their parents' money for access. So like if you're deprived of access, then I think that trauma is going to continue to run your life. Of like,
It's true.
I'm never going to have enough. It's always going to be bad. I'm always going to have homelessness. It's like someone's going to kick me out. Like that fear is what drives our country, drives Korea. Like that's the whole thing. But like, I don't know, universal basic income, for example. If that happens, we would quench that immediately in a generation.
Ooh.
Immediately.
Okay.
But they wouldn't want
yes.
that. Like, why
No.
would anyone in Washington want that for the populace? It doesn't
'Cause
make
profits
their
must go
jobs
up.
better. That's
Yeah,
what I
'cause-
mean.
Yeah.
So if they're still in charge, like they're never going to want to give up the power. Like this is how it works. Like the underclass supports the upper class since antiquity, you know? Like, so like for us to change it, we have to like strip ourselves of that like idea of scarcity, but like how?
You know, I've like fallen into the YouTube hole of like male philosophers, like in this vein, right, about capitalism very specifically, and this is a very popular thought among these guys that civilization has been on a downward spiral since man started to farm and became an agrarian.
100%. Oh yeah, that's a very popular.
Yes,
Because we had
And so,
too
like,
much, and then now we had to
too
figure
much.
out who gets and who doesn't.
Yes, because like
Yeah.
once you're farming and you're not just doing subsistence, like you're trying to trade, you're bartering, and then now there's an idea of ownership and property of the land in which you farm, all
Right.
these things, right? So like, you know, if you consider that, there's a part of me where it's just like, okay, well then, you know, we can't ever go back to that. You know, we're trying to
do
get
you
rid of smartphones. We're trying to get rid of agriculture. We're talking
No, not
you know,
get rid of agriculture, but idea of ownership.
Sure. I mean, I
That's
will,
the idea that we have to get rid of, is that I own something that is natural to the land.
It's funny because like I think what you're considering is like I think a sort of human impulse to, because I say this as someone who's seeing this in a 1 and 2 year old, 3-year-old, 4-year-old, right? Like at that age where they, you know, in most situations they want for nothing, right? They're not hungry, or if they are, they're immediately fed. This like they're safe, right?
Yeah.
Every primal need is met. And yet if you ask them to share something that they really like, they're gonna say no.
They'll go crazy. I said
They'll go
there's that
crazy.
TikTok going around of like, there's 3 plates and the kid gets 2 cookies and the mom gets 0. She's like,
Yeah.
oh, and then they see if the kid shares or not. And the funniest thing is when the kids are like, too bad, and they like eat both the cookies. And then of course there's sweet ones that are like, you could have
Of
one,
course.
mommy, you know, whatever. So like, I think it's so embarrassing when they post the one where the kid's being crazy or like selfish, because I'm like, why would you post that? That just means that she learned that from you. Where else would she learn that from?
Some kids are just like that. I swear to you. I have one child that does act
You
one
think
way.
they're born
another,
like that?
Yes.
Wow, interesting.
I think
So
there's
it must
some-
be like ingrained in our personality to be like selfish versus selfless.
I mean, I think there is something in primal where some Neanderthals, right, and some Homo sapiens literally saw the horizon and were like, I wonder what's there. And there were others that were like, why don't we till the land in front of us and wait for the bear fruit, and we will pick that. And I don't care about what's beyond.
Yeah.
I think that's the difference.
It's just genetics.
I think there's something just like, I think is also good for
So you're saying like
humanity.
capitalism is genetic?
I
Like
don't think capitalism,
greed?
but to want, not greed. I think greed, and when I say greed, I don't mean greed as like just in terms of material wealth. I'm saying greed as in wanting more. If it's knowing more, seeing more, it's the more. And I think that is just innate in some people. Like it's good for, I think, humanity. Right? Some people need to go out there and figure out if there's anything else
the
out there.
Explorers.
And there's some people that need to stay here and make sure there's a fucking fort to return to.
Yeah.
And protect ourselves from the woolly mammoth.
So maybe it's the thing is that in world history, we've bred too many explorers and not enough tillers. I think
because
maybe
explorers
we have to
killed the ones
rebalance.
that
Yeah, exactly.
You want a Thanos? Yeah.
I mean, people aren't having kids anyway, so like we'll
true.
be unpopulated in a generation. So I'm good. We don't need to Thanos anyone. It's doing it by the. And I do believe, and we can wrap up APIH month with this. That Korea has become the next Japan, in that Japan used to be, and it still is, like a very fast R&D country, research and development, because it is homogenous, it's tiny, so science and ideas moves through the population fast.
Yes.
There's not a lot of like blocks towards it. And now that Korea has become like the next Japan, the ideas and the technology is like flying through the country. And I'm hoping that, you know, with all the demo, all the protesting, and you know, the fall of the latest president, that we we power through these iterations like fast enough where like Korea can maybe find a solution to this.
You think so?
You know?
Like
I do.
Beyond, like, so if like Korea's
like,
the new
I'm talking
Japan,
about I'm talking about like universal basic income, AI and robot slaves. Because if you take care of the tilling, like our contemporary tilling, whatever the fuck that is, there isn't really not much left.
Bitcoin.
It's just Bitcoin, or like making money for money.
Yeah.
Like whatever that is, like if we finally, and Korea's population is dropping, right? So it's going to come to a balanced point where they have to figure out some kind of governing strategy where the population no longer needs to be tilling, because the technology will get so good where AI will take over all the labor force. So you'll get, I believe that Korea might be one of the first countries, if they do it right, because there's so little people and so little land, that they're going to figure out how to do away with the labor class and all have a basic way to live.
Wow.
I do believe that. I think U.S. is too big for it to happen on a national scale.
Sure.
But I think Korea's just small enough.
Wow. Interesting. I mean, I just wonder, when you say that if Korea is the new Japan, like, what is Japan now?
The new China. I think Japan has done a great job of being the hermit kingdom without being the hermit kingdom.
Sure.
They're very insular.
Yes.
And they don't fuck around with a lot of international politics. They keep their shit tight. And Korea is way more of a global player, I think, at least in soft power. Japan doesn't really care. Like, they have their own stuff, and if it leaks out, it leaks out. But like, Korea's doing it for the world stage.
Yeah, I mean, at least with military, just because of the American involvement and stuff. You know, I didn't realize this but I realized this. I was reading about it when I was over there. But Korea started to has entered the weapons market, and it's selling.
Fuck yes, finally.
Is selling fighter planes and like artillery and military weapons to
That's
like
classic
Poland.
late stage capitalism.
That's what I mean. It's like selling it to Poland. They're selling it to like various, because they're cheaper than America and their turnaround is better. It's not as good, but who cares?
Who cares? You're killing. You're killing people. What difference does it make if it's accurate?
So, and Japan isn't allowed to have a fucking
That's
standing
crazy.
army. Yeah, and America
That's
and Japan isn't
crazy.
allowed to have a standing army. So there's like a part of it where, I think,
They're like handcuffed because of Pearl Harbor.
yeah,
Yeah.
they're not out of timeout yet in that regard. But like, I just
They're brewing something, I'm sure of it. Don't put it past the Japanese.
I
and
think-
by the way,
yes.
if you're like a non-East Asian wondering why we don't talk about other types of Asians, listen, I don't have enough knowledge to comment.
even though you're in a movie called Nice Indian Boy.
Acting. Yeah, I just don't have enough to like comment on where they are culturally. So just know
in
that
India?
it's not
Okay.
or Southeast Asia or whatever. Like I'm not being East Asian supremacy. A lot of like some of my like I have a Filipino friend that's like
Yeah.
always teases me about the fact that like Koreans are so
Racist.
elitist.
Yeah.
Yes. I was going to say elitist, but yeah. We are. And I completely agree that we are and we need to be better.
I'm
about
not.
that.
Okay. Yeah. I don't need to be better. I'm not.
All right. Well, happy AAPI Asian Month. I'll try to do better for all the Asians out there. Thank you so much for listening. And we'll talk to you next time. Bye.
Bye.